It's Michigan week. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. This is Nate Bauer from Blue White Illustrated, senior editor. And it's a big week. We both have on collared shirts and I'm wearing a sweater. So, of course, that means a big game is coming up. The Stripe out in Michigan, top-ranked teams in the nation. James Franklin's press conference just wrapped up, and we're talking about his reaction to all of the questions he was asked. So first off, we can't go any further without discussing the Michigan sign-stealing situation and James Franklin's comments about that, which were...
He doesn't want to get into it, which, you get. I understand it. He really did avoid it pretty much at all costs. He said he was going to focus on, certainly the things that happen on the field. He was asked about, and this is maybe his one subtle shot. He was asked about whether or not Jim Harbaugh's status for this weekend has any influence over this, right? Mm-hmm. Do you prepare differently? And what he said was, paraphrasing, we're paying attention to the coach's film. And by coach's film, I mean what happens on the 53 and a third yards of the football field.
Between the white lines.
Between the white lines. So he will not be focusing solely and intently on Michigan sidelines to figure out their signs. But, look... That story has a life of its own. It's going to continue to happen this week. It's not going away. Yeah. So certainly this is something that James Franklin's going to have to probably address twice more this week at least. He'll have to do so on Wednesday night after practice. He'll have to do so probably again, I would imagine, on his Thursday night radio show. But I feel fairly confident that he's going to give a non-answer to that situation for the majority of the week.
Yeah, it's going to be... I'm fully prepared for when this video is released to you that there's already been an update on what we're talking about right now. Like, this thing has, as you said, it's got a life of its own. It's got legs, and it's growing rapidly. So all of that aside, the game, which is, where I also focus, 53 and a third in between the lines here of what's going to happen this week. You want to talk about game flow, the style of game they're going to play. I think it came up again today in the press conference that things snowballed last year, but Penn State was in the game until partway through the third quarter. So James Franklin focused on what in that aspect?
Yeah, well, so it all wraps together a little bit, right? That was I'm remembering offhand here, but I believe it was a 17-16 game at the half, right? So it was a game that was probably closer on the scoreboard than it felt at any point at Michigan Stadium in the first half of that game. Obviously, Curtis Jacobs had an interception return. There were things that happened that, though Michigan controlled the game, Penn State was still very much in it. Mm-hmm. However, what happened in the second half is where all of the broader conversation of gap accountability, run defense, having a bigger defensive line, right? A majority of the press conference today, I felt, was about that and how Penn State has structurally changed and gotten better. And really what James Franklin said about that was, hey, our linebackers were young and inexperienced last year. Yeah. Got bigger, but maintained ability to move on the defensive line. Yeah. And that's about it. But also, that was what happened in the second half, right? They had a couple of big runs that went for touchdowns or close to touchdowns, and that's the game. So Penn State avoiding that this year is going to be just as important as it was last year. And the end result is his expectation of the style of game it's going to be. Is this going to be a shootout the way that, I mean, he literally said this. Is it going to be a shootout like Ohio State was at this place last year? Probably not. Right? That's just not the style that Michigan plays, and it really hasn't been the style that Penn State has played this season. So more likely, and I think what he's saying they are preparing for, is the notion that this game and its outcome will hinge on between 4 and 6 plays. Right? So those long runs that Blake Corum kind of gutted them on last year, that can't have it happen again. Donovan Edwards, you can't have that happen again. And if you are able to do that, you're going to put yourself in a position where it's probably going to come down to the last 4 minutes, the last half of the the fourth quarter.
No one liked my defensive tackle joke, Nate.
I loved it. It was a little silent, but
I at least got somebody to smile when it was a terrible job reading the room, because this was, as you said, James Franklin, relaxed, but this was very serious today. Very serious football things are happening this weekend, and I think that it's been at my point in that joke was it's been ad nauseum since last year at this time that you're not big enough, you're not athletic enough, you're not on that level. And check out T. Frank's Film Room. It's available right now, bluewhiteillustrated.com. Great time to remind you that if you sign up right now, it's 50% off the yearly subscription price, so you can get in on all the information about what's going on with Penn State football before the biggest game of the 2023 season. The best opportunity for Penn State to get into that conversation about the college football playoff is going to happen behind us on Saturday, and you can be in the know before then. But in the Film Room, I've shown you over the year, they have gotten bigger. Yep. They have gotten stronger. They are athletic. They've done the work. Now it's going to be about, was it enough? Was it enough for this particular game? And everything else that happens off the field that we started this video with, who knows how that affects this particular game with all the scrutiny that's going on.
Yeah, the thing about that post game last year is that it was a rare moment of his frustration coming out. Right, he doesn't do that a whole lot. Even in losses, he's normally fairly composed, and he was in that moment as well. But it always comes back to what happens between January and August for him. Right, that's how that's the lens that he views it from in a lot of cases, and so his frustration in that moment was not necessarily just that they lost. Obviously, that's paramount, but also the way that they lost was something that he had, and the staff had, and the nutrition staff and the weight staff had hammered the entire offseason of, hey guys, you can't look like this. You got to be bigger. Hakeem Beamon, elephant in the that's what it was. Right. It's just they got pushed around, and it is a situation that has, in a lot of respects, resolved itself this season enough to hold on to Michigan's offensive line. That's going to be awesome. You know what Michigan brings to the table. Right. He talked about them winning the Joe Moore Award twice in a row. That is going to be such a huge piece of this, and whether or not Penn State's strides in that department over the offseason are enough to get them over the top this year.
Yeah, and there's also the last thing I want to close with is talking about Drew Aller, which James Franklin seems very uninterested in discussing the difference between Drew Aller against Indiana and the end of the game and the player that we saw against Maryland. Now, again, there are schematic differences in those games that cause certain opportunities for the quarterback, but it is undeniable that he looked more confident and poised on film than he did previously in this season. He was asked about it after the game. He was asked about it here, and I think maybe the phrasing of the question doesn't necessarily isn't the best example of him being confident in that game. But to me, I always come back to the quarterback because, it's football, and that's the way football is played for the most part, in modern America. Yeah. And if you've got a confident Drew Aller, he's the reason they went up 21-0. The defense gave them a fourth down stop, yes, to start things off. But Drew Aller, seeing the full field, being calm and poised in his progressions, if he's able to do that against Michigan, they talk about balance. James Franklin talks about balance and being able to be a complementary football team on offense, do what you need to do in this game. The thing about Michigan is they do have those horses up front. Yep. And just generally, you're not going to have as much success on the ground. So that puts the ball in the quarterback's hands. Don't be Maryland is basically what he said today. Yep. Don't have that game plan, but you need the quarterback to take some pressure off of your offensive line and your run game. And I think if you've got Drew Aller playing like he did for the last 4 quarters in 5 minutes, you can be in any game for the rest of the season, however long your season lasts. So that's what I got, Nate. Yeah. What do you want to get out on?
Well, I just think that it's an unbelievably difficult balance to strike, because you do not want – I was going to say it here, and then I thought about it while you were talking, and I was like, I should not say that because it's not true. Drew Aller can't go into this game being willing to lose by 40. Can't. Right. That is not an option. That looseness of, hey, this is who they are, and we're going to have to be something that we haven't been really all year. If it is a one possession game, he has to continue to take care of the football the way that he has all season. You cannot put the ball in bad spots. You have to be able to have that maturity about you, but also, and this is what James Franklin said, you also have to have your receivers step up, right? I mean, and look, there's an underlying thing here. Did not mention Trey Wallace, so let's go there.
Right.
When he talked about the receivers that need to make plays, it was Dante Cephas, Keandre Lambert-Smith, and the tight ends. Those guys have to be able, they're going to have to be able to make some explosive plays. They're going to have to make some game-defining plays, and so will Drew. But also, the free-flowingness, the willingness that Drew had against Maryland, those were very different circumstances. That was a very different game from the defense that he's going to see this weekend.
We've got to have this debate over on the Blue White Illustrated BWI live show because I've got some things I want to respond with, and we don't have any more time. We got to get out of here. This is the BWI James Franklin press conference recap video. Make sure you subscribe to BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Get 50% off of the yearly subscription right now, and if you're feeling frisky, subscribe to Blue White Illustrated here on YouTube.